Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are in Parshat Yitro. We are in this Torah portion named Yitro after Yitro. So after Moshe's father-in-law. So one of the questions the commentators, whenever you read a commentary, we were taught when we were studying commentary on Torah, whenever you read a commentary, your first question is, what's their question? Right? So you get some words of Torah, then you get Rashi's commentary. So Rashi doesn't tell you what Rashi's problem is. They don't tell you what their question is. They just give you commentary. But we were taught by our rabbis, you always ask, what is the question the commentary is coming to answer? So a lot of the commentary that I'm bringing this morning comes out of the question, even though nobody says it, but it clearly comes out of the question, how does Yitro get his own Torah portion? Right? Yitro is the high priest of Midian. He's pagan, right? He's Mesopotamian pagan. He's the high priest. He's the big kahuna, literally, the Kohen, the kahuna of Midian. How does he get his own Torah portion? How does he merit his own Torah portion? And so a lot of the commentary that I'm bringing this morning kind of discusses what's going on with Yitro, which is interesting. All right. So we're going to focus this morning on Yitro. We're going to focus on his relationship to Moshe and a little bit about the moment, this encounter that Yitro and Moshe have, and how that juxtaposes with the moment between Moshe and God. So that we have this moment of learning. Moshe learns from Yitro, and that is right before, which I never noticed before until I read some commentary this year, that's right before Har Sinai. It's right before Revelation. So there's this mini revelation between Moshe and Yitro, and then the big revelation between God and Moshe, and presumably God, and therefore the people. Okay. So Torah, Yitro's going to teach Moshe Torah, little t, before Moshe gets Torah, capital T. Exactly, Margot. You're following. Good. I love that. Love it when people follow. All right. Because sometimes I'm not sure I make any sense. So here we go. We're at chapter 18 of the book of Exodus. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midian Choten Moshe et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe uleYisrael amo. So Yitro, the priest of Midian, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard everything that God had done for Moshe and Israel, God's people, that God took them out of Egypt. Okay. So one question is, how did Yitro hear? Who told Yitro? Right? All right. So we don't know. We're not told. Vayikach Yitro choten Moshe et Tzipora eshet Moshe achar shilucheha. So Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, took Tzipora, Moshe's wife, after he had sent her, meaning away. All right. What are some of the questions we might have now? Why is Tzipora in Midian? When did she go there? Why did Moshe send her there? Ve'et shnei vaneha asher shem ha'echad Gershom. So, and her two sons. So both Tzipora and the two sons have been sent back to Midian, presumably, right? If Yitro's taking them, they must have been sent back to Midian. And we're learning that the name of the one is Gershom, because I was a ger, I was a stranger in a foreign land. Where was Moshe a stranger? In Midian, right? He left Egypt. He's a refugee in Midian. So he has his son in Midian, and he names him Gershom. I was a stranger there in Midian. Ki Amar, because he said, Ger Hayiti be'eretz nochri'ah. I was a stranger in a foreign land. Luna, it's okay. B'shem ha'echad Eliezer, and the name of the other one is Eliezer. Ki Elohei avi be'ezri ve'etzileni mecherev paro. Because the God of my father was my help, delivering me from the sword of Pharaoh. So Eli Ezer, God was my help. My child is Eli Ana. My God answered. Right? So a very common Yahwist name starts with Eli, my God. And then you have what comes after that. So Eliana, Eliezer. All right, let's see. Vayavo Yitro choten Moshe, vanav v'ishto el Moshe. So Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, comes with the sons and his wife, to Moshe el Hamidbar, to the wilderness, where he was encamped at Har HaElohim, at the mountain of God. All right, so a couple of questions we might have. Okay. How does Yitro know where Moshe is? Notice, Yitro goes to him. Yitro takes Zipporah and the boys to Moshe. He's heard what happened. He somehow knows where Moshe is, and he goes to Moshe. He is the high priest of Midian. He's a pretty important guy. He leaves his home and goes to Moshe and brings Moshe's family to him. And he says to Moshe, meaning he sends word to Moshe, I, your father-in-law Yitro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons. Now, is that a poke at Moshe? Right? Meaning I'm bringing the woman who has been a single mom to these 2 boys while you've been busy, leading a nation. Vayetze Moshe likrat chutno. So the rabbis tell us we learn a lot from this, that this is in fact proper behavior. Moshe went out likrat chutno, to greet and meet his father-in-law. So this is the proper behavior. This is what we do for Shabbat, right? Likrat Shabbat, right? We sing it every week. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'neilcha, right? So we sing it in Lecha Dodi every week. We go out to meet Shabbat. So that is what Moshe does. This is the proper behavior when you are addressed and being visited by someone to whom you want to show respect. You go out to meet them. We don't wait for them to come to us. And v'yishtachu v'yishaklo. So he goes out to greet him. He bows down to him. So knees to the ground, forehead to the ground. V'yishaklo, and kissed him, right? This is the traditional greeting. You still see, this is how men greet each other, right? In the Middle East. They kiss each other. V'yish'alu ish l're'ehu. And each asked after the other one's shalom. Ish l're'ehu l'shalom, right? They asked after their shalom. How's your shalom? What's your state of wholeness like right now? Vayava'u ha'oaleh, and they came and they went into the tent. So commentaries want to know, what tent? Right? Is this the tent of meeting? Is this the Ohel Moed? And if it is the tent of meeting, why is the high priest of Midian going into the tent of meeting? So we're not told. So, and then Moshe tells his father-in-law everything that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh did to Pharaoh and to Egypt on behalf of Israel, and all of the hardships that had befallen them on the derech, on the way, and that God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, had delivered them. And Yitro rejoiced, al kol hatova asher asa Adonai liYisrael, on all of the good that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh had done for Israel, delivering it, meaning the people, from the hand of Egypt. What does Yitro say in response to everything that Moshe just described? Baruch Hashem. Right? So Yitro, the pagan, the non-Jew, is the first one to say Baruch Hashem when he hears something good has happened. Right? That's not exactly where we would think that expression comes from. And so it's the Midianite who says Baruch Hashem, like Baruch Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Baruch, blessed be Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, who has saved y'all from the hand of Egypt and the hand of Pharaoh, who has saved, who delivered you, this people, mitachat yad Mitzrayim, from under the hand of Egypt. Ata, now, yadati, now I know, ki gadol Adonai mikol ha'elohim, that greater is Yod Heh than all of the gods. Ki vadavar asher zadu alehem, by this thing, ki vadavar asher zadu alehem. So it's tangled Hebrew. What does the English say? By the result of their very schemes against the people, meaning that God defeated all of the other schemes that were against Israel and delivers them. So, Ata Yadati, now I know, right? Where have we heard this before? Ata Yadati, now I know that, blah, 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 blah. Right? We heard this when God speaks to Abraham at the binding of Isaac. Now I know that you are God-fearing because you didn't withhold your son from me. Ata, now, yadati, it's just Dan. Ata, now I know. I know something different based on what I've just witnessed. So through Moshe's recounting of the narrative, he understands something different, and that is that Yod Heh Vav Heh is greater than all the gods. All right. Vayikach Yitro choten Moshe olah. So Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, takes an olah, a holocaust, and other sacrifices for God. Vayavo Aharon v'chol ziknei Yisrael le'echol lechem im choten Moshe lifnei ha'Elohim. What's happening here? Aaron and all of the elders of Israel come to share a meal, right? To eat, to break bread, to eat a meal, im choten Moshe, with the father-in-law of Moshe, lifnei ha'Elohim, before God. Now remember, sacrifices are so that you have a meal before God. You're sharing lunch with God. That's what a sacrifice is. So this means that Aaron, the high priest of Israel, and all of the 70 elders of Israel, the officials, the cultic official and the official officials, they are all coming and sharing in this sacrificial meal that a non-Israelite is bringing before God. Interesting. So whatever we have about you can't worship their gods and you can't be with them and you can't hang with them and be very careful and all of that, it's true. It's there. But this is also there, that Yitro brings the sacrifice and Aaron and all of the elders come and share that sacrificial meal with Yitro before God. All right. So Yitro has offered a sacrifice that they cultically accept as valid. Vayihi mimacharat, and it was the next day that Moshe was sitting lishpot et ha'am, to judge the people. Vaya'amod ha'am al Moshe min haboker ad ha'arev, and the people stood literally on Moshe from morning until night. So Moshe's sitting to judge the people. This is an expression, right? The judges would sit in the gates of the city and adjudicate cases. So Moshe's listening to situations, and he is giving God's ruling, like what the right thing to do is here. But the rabbis go further. They're going to go further. They're going to say, look at the verb used here. What's Moshe doing? Yeshev. He's sitting. What are the people doing? They're standing from morning until night. So the rabbis want to say, part of the problem is Moshe thinks he's a big shot, and so he's sitting like a king on the throne while the people are standing all day, right? That this is part of the problem. Moshe has taken too much on himself, but it's also hubris, right? There's some sense of I'm going to sit while the people stand, and that this is a problem, right? That this is one of the problems with what's happening here. Vayar choten Moshe et kol asher hu oseh la'am, and Yitro sees everything that he's doing, la'am, to the people, vayomer, and says, Ma hadavar hazeh asher ata oseh la'am. What is this thing that you're doing to the people? Madua ata yoshev livadcha. Why is it that you're sitting all by yourself, all alone? V'chol ha'am nitzav alecha. And all the people, remember, this is that word for matzeva, for a pillar, right? We keep using this word for, and all the people are just kind of like planted there on you, meaning, across from you. Min haboker ad ha'arev, from the morning until the night. Vayomle Moshe lechotno, and Moshe says to his father-in-law, Ki yavo elai ha'am lidrosh Elohim, because the people are coming to me, lidrosh Elohim, to see what God is gonna say, right? They're wanting to ask what God wants them to do. So they're coming to me. Ki yeh lahem davar ba elai, that when they have a dispute, it comes before me. When there's a davar, when there's an issue, a thing, they come before me, and I decide between one person and their neighbor, and I make known chukei ha'elohim ve'et torotav, and I make known God's laws and God's Torah to the people. Vayomer chotno Moshe elav, but Moshe's father-in-law says to him, Lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. It's not good, this thing that you're doing, which I never noticed before. I only noticed it this year. What's the other place we get lo tov? When we're talking about creation and we get lo tov, what's the only thing that's lo tov? Anybody remember?
That Adam should be alone.
Good, Bert. The only thing that's lo tov in creation is that Adam is alone. What is the lo tov here that Yitro's pointing out? It's not good that you're alone, right? Because he uses that language. He uses it right here. Right here. Why are you sitting levadcha, alone? Never saw that before. That's the lo tov here, just like it was with Adam. When we get lo tov, it is often about human beings trying to do it alone. It's not good. It's not how it's supposed to be. You will for sure flame out, right? Gam ata, gam ha'am hazeh, both you and this people that's with you. Ki kaved mimcha hadavar, because the thing is too heavy for you, right? This is what happened to Pharaoh's heart too, remember? It got kaved, it got heavy. Lo tuchal asahu levadcha. You are not able to do it yourself, alone. Remember we got tuchal? Who was tuchal? You are able? Yaakov, right? You were able. This is what the Malach says to Yaakov. So, lo tuchal, we're getting about Moshe, levadcha. You can't do this. Lo tuchal, levadcha, by yourself. Ata, now, shama b'koli, listen to my voice. Where do we get this one? Anybody? Where do we get shma, listen to her voice? God telling Abraham to listen to Sarah, right? Shma b'kola, listen to her voice. Here, Yitro says, Shma b'koli, listen to my voice. Listen to what I'm going to say. I'm going to give you some etza, right? I'atzcha. I'm going to give you etza. I'm going to counsify you. I'm going to counsel you. Vayhi Elohim imach, and God will be with you. You represent the people, mul ha-Elohim, against, across from God, right? And you bring the disputes and the issues and all the problems before God, and you tell them all the law and all of the Torah, and make known to them what they're supposed to do. What you're going to do is you're going to find from among all the people, you're going to find from all the people capable individuals who are Yir'ei Elohim, who are, right, in awe of the divine, trustworthy ones who spurn ill-gotten gain. Set these over them as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and let them judge the people at all times, and have them bring every major issue to you, but let them decide every minor issue themselves. Make it easier for yourself by letting them share the burden with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, you will be able to bear up, and all these people will go home unwearied, says this translation. What does it say literally in Hebrew? And also, kol ha'am hazeh, this whole people, to their place will they come in peace. Vayishma Moshe lekol chotno, and Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law. Vaya'as kol asher amar, and he did everything that he said. And Moshe chose anshe chayo, like brave people from all of Israel. You have to be brave to lead the Jewish people. So Vayitain otam roshim, he made them heads over thousands, and then over hundreds, over fifties, and over tens. And they judged the people at all times. The difficult matters they would bring to Moshe, and all the minor matters they would decide themselves. Then Moshe bade his father-in-law farewell and went on his way to his own land. So, any initial reflections anybody wants to make?
Kaved.
Kaved.
Can't that also mean significant, important? And is it possible that Yitro was saying this is really too important for one person to do? Not just that it was too much of a burden on him, but it was too significant.
Beautiful. Beautiful interpretation, Bert. Beautiful. That it's too important. We can't just have one mind working on this. There have to be several approaches to adjudicating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Yes. Judith.
It seems to me very important, too, that we get to see this side of Moshe, because we have heard so often about how he says, not me, I can't do it, not me, I'm not strong enough, my voice isn't good, I have a speech impediment. And now we see the fullness of the personality.
Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. And Moshe's ready to learn.
Yes.
Right? He's humble enough to listen to his father-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Rachel points out, yes, Elohim, plural, yes, right? We mistakenly retroject monotheism onto the Bible. That is not the case. It is not monotheistic. We're supposed to be monotheists. That doesn't mean there aren't other gods.
That's right.
It means we only get to worship Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. That was the early understanding of monotheism. There are other deities. We're not allowed to be in relationship to them, because God took us out of Egypt. And what we owe is our exclusive loyalty to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Nick. Yes, we saw the adjudicating. Yes.
I promise that's not what I was going to try and get attention for. It occurred to me, too, that in a way, if Moses is himself just the sole decider of all of these decisions, in a way, he's almost acting like he's at risk of acting like a god too, right? Like almost taking on becoming his own pharaoh.
Beautiful.
And so and then it's additionally funny that again it's the pagan who's like, "Hey, don't do that. You're at risk of that." In a way.
Nice, very nice, Nick. So that the word kaved is used about Pharaoh's heart. And Yitro uses it about Moshe, saying, be careful, dude. You're starting to act a bit like a dictator. Just saying. Mm-hmm. You're beginning to act like you think you might be, right, a god, essentially, right? That you're the emperor, well, you're not. Or you shouldn't be. There should be a judiciary that is functional outside of you. Because the danger is, exactly, you might become like Paro, whose heart was kaved. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oof, my brilliant students. Okay. Lisa, is your hand up? George, is your hand up? Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I just along the same lines as Nick, I think that it's a lesson in teaching people how to adjudicate, how to do justice and the importance of it. And if you start appointing many people to do this, they learn a process and they learn a value system from you, like what is right and wrong. How do you do that? And that becomes part of the culture. I mean, that's a really brilliant move.
Yep, we're going to look at that.
Do it with trustworthy people.
That's right, Lisa.
Who aren't in it for the money.
that's something that jumped out right this year. Is like, when we're going to look at it, the first commentary we're going to look at talks exactly about that, about like what's important first and foremost, right, is not how smart they are. Is it?
No.
Right.
Their character, right? That is what is most important, that Moshe choose people of good character. And I was just listening to a podcast talking about the Supreme Court, and about, our justice system right now, and talking about that, that really that's what's most important in our judges also, because you can interpret the law in a lot of different ways. That's not how smart they are or how well they know the law. It's, are they committed to a system of laws, a system of checks and balances, and what is fair, within that. And if you don't start there, it doesn't matter from, like, if we don't have that, their decisions don't matter. I mean, their decisions are not going to be good decisions. It doesn't matter how accurate they might be according to the law. So, I mean, I think that's exactly what we're going to talk about. George? You got to unmute though, George.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
2 points. One is in monotheism, there may be other gods, but this God is the most powerful. So that's one point I want to make. The other one, this is the standard division of labor and delegation of authority that we have in our judicial system and in industry, that there's just too much for the leader. And it should be delegated down to men of character or women of character, which we don't. Well, what's happening now is a different issue, I guess, which I won't comment on. But it is the standard division of labor and delegation, which is the way most systems work in the United States anyway.
Right. And so, but look how far back it goes.
Yes.
Like, we kind of take it for granted, but look, this is like.
Yes, and developed, suggested by a non-Jewish person.
Exactly. Margot?
I was going to say real quick, just rewinding, I really love this parsha because we also have a nod to intertribal relations, right? So people get together and they are exchanging decisions and guidance and counsel, and maybe all live in this type of in our times now. Thank you.
Beautiful. So that's another commentary we're going to look at, is, what we're so mired in this anti-Semitic kind of, moment, like of feeling like so immersed in anti-Semitism that, right, we forget that there's this incredible moment in Torah that's really about, this is how it's supposed to be, is that, and that Yitro rejoices, not for something that happened to Yitro, but something that happened for Moshe and Moshe's people. Didn't even happen for Tzipporah or his grandchildren. They were with him, right? He's rejoicing for good that happened to someone else, and that we do. And so one of the commentaries we're going to look at says Yitro, the first, not the first ally, essentially. Okay, Bert?
This just brings to mind one of my favorite sayings from the Talmud, Ben Zoma. He says, "Who is wise?" And that is a person who learns from everyone. And part of the lesson here is, while we're learning Jewish stuff here, that doesn't mean only Jews. Jews don't have a monopoly on stuff to learn, and we should learn, even from people who we disagree with in other things.
Beautiful. Rachel.
Thank you. What Margot said reminded me of the fact that this part comes right after the Amalek incident, which, if memory serves, you said before, because before I became a member, I just have to confess that I've listened to every single one of your podcasts, Torah studies, and meant repeatedly. So no, I'm not a crazy fangirl, but I'm kind of a crazy fangirl for Rabbi Amy. So sorry, but I'm paying for membership now. So forgive me. But you said before that it's so important that it's here because that is a way of saying, look, it's not just Amaleks out there. And so when Margot said what she said, it just made me think of that. But I was also, when you were reading this part, it kind of made me sad, because what we're going to see so much in Exodus is how the Israel, on the one hand, you really want them to show that they're ready to come out of this slavery mindset and be ready to take responsibility and share in responsibility and live into that. And yet, so much of the time they're like, no thanks. We like, just not having responsibility. And if somebody could just do all this for us, that'd be great. Thanks. And that's really, it's kind of heartbreaking when you look around where we are right now. It also just it was kind of heartbreaking when you were reading it. So
beautiful, beautifully said. This is, for me, part of the beauty of Torah is like each year I feel something different. You know what I mean? Whether it's about Moshe or it's about the people. And it's like, so that's great that you're able to feel like, oh, I feel so sad that like everyone's ready for them to succeed and ready for them to take responsibility and ready for them to dig in, but I know what's coming. Like, I know what's gonna happen. I feel so sad, right?
And it's so sad.
It's so sad, right? So that's the beauty of having read Torah over and over, is that, we read each parsha knowing what's coming, right? And reading the parsha through the lens of knowing what's coming often makes it so much more poignant. Right. And so powerful that it's like everyone wants this for them. And we know that they're not going to be able to do it. All right. Not this generation anyway. All right. So to many of your wonderful points, Dr. Mijal Bitan, my teacher at Hartman, makes the point, but both of you made, Rachel and Margot. Where's her commentary? She says, most years I've been captivated by the theology of Sinai. But this year, I was struck by something else. What happens just before Sinai? After leaving Egypt, the Israelites are pursued by their former masters. The sea splits, the Egyptian army drowns. Then, as Rachel pointed out, they encounter Amalek, a people with nothing to gain, victimizing the weakest among the Israelites. Amalek embodies anti-Semitism at its worst, senseless, spineless, ever present. We often forget counter histories, the what ifs. Had Sinai come directly after the war with Amalek, Jewish identity might have been inextricably tied to victimhood, bound not only to God and each other, but also to the permanence of Amalek's hatred. Yitro greets the Jews with admiration. More than that, he offers guidance to help them succeed. He sees Moses' judicial system as unsustainable and advises reform. Moses listens, and Jewish law is transformed. The Torah portion that defines the covenant, meaning Torah, Sinai, between God and the people, right? The Torah portion that defines the covenant is named after a non-Jew, Yitro, perhaps the first non-Jewish ally. It represents an encounter with the outside world built on respect, learning, and cooperation. The lesson is powerful. Before receiving the covenant that would define them, after centuries of enslavement, the Jewish people are asked to remember not just Amalek's enmity, but also Yitro's embrace. She quoted Rabbi Sachs earlier in the piece. I can't say for certain what Rabbi Sachs would make of this post-October 7th moment, but I believe he would urge us to do both, to confront anti-Semitism without illusions, and to uplift those ready to stand with us. And more than that, he would remind us that to be a Jew is to never lose faith in our calling to heal a fractured world. It is a lofty calling, one yet not fully realized. Until then, we carry both memories, Amalek's enmity and Yitro's embrace. Then I have a comment to myself, talk about this phone call I got. So I got a text from Rachel Feldman who says to me, Bishop Sherman, somebody says that he is a friend of Rabbi Kilmevsky and wants you to call him. And I'm like, I have no idea who this rabbi is that this person is friends with. And I have no idea who this person is who's calling me, or wants me to call them. Right. So it's Rabbi Kanevsky at Pico. I'm like, I don't know who this person is. So I look at the phone number, and the person I'm supposed to call is Bishop Sherman Manning. And I'm like, About what? I have no idea what this is. Like, what? Can somebody like track down what's going on here, please? Because life is kind of crazy right now. But whatever, fine. I'll reach out to the bishop. I look at the area code of the phone number, and the area code is 404, which is Georgia. That's my old area code. So I'm like, wait a minute. Like, a bishop from Georgia, a friend of Rabbi Kanevsky, who I can't place to save my life, is wanting to talk to me. Okay, so I call, and here's this guy, this Christian bishop who's in LA and is in the, African American Christian community, and is calling to say, I saw you on the news. I heard, about what happened to your community. I'm so sorry. And I just want you to know we are praying for you. And if there is anything you need, we are here. We have got you. You will come out of this stronger. God will, and just started preaching. And I was like, hallelujah, hallelujah. And he says, just in the time I said, I can't tell you how much this means to me, to my community. And he said, we're going to have some meetings with the African American community, the Black community, and the Jewish community. And we're going to get together and we're going to, we're in. I said, I am in, Bishop. Sign me up. And I said, I'm from Atlanta. I sat at the feet of Coretta Scott King. And he says, just in the time I've been talking to you, Rabbi, you sound so much better. I said, well, Bishop, I am better. I am better now. And so and I couldn't help but think, I knew what I was going to read about Michelle Biton. And I'm like, here we are talking about how crazy it is on the progressive left, how difficult it is right now between the African American and Jewish community, how and how anti-Semitism is in all these places, and with allies that we have stood with, and we don't understand what the heck is going on, and how we feel betrayed and lonely and whatever. And I get this call from Bishop Manning to say, Rabbi, we are praying for you. And we will help you however you need, if you need anything. So I just felt like, the interventionist God that I don't believe in, kind of moved the chess pieces around so that it's you wanted to teach that, Amy? Well, guess what? Watch this. It's real. It's not just commentary. She's right. There are allies. They're around you, and you have to work with the allies that step up, and you have to work with who's willing to work with you. That's all you can do. And you need to look for those people and be mindful and open and call the bishop back. Call the bishop back, right? Because it's tempting to go, you know what? I don't have time for this. I don't know who this person is. I don't have time for this. Life is like a disaster right now, literally. And it's You have to have time for the people who are reaching out to you, or else you can't complain that you don't have allies and that you don't have partners in the work, and that everyone over there, whatever over there is, right, is fill in the blank. All right. So that was my Torah that the God I don't believe in sent me this week. All right. So we will be working with Bishop Manning at some point, KI. All right. So famous commentator on Torah, Christian commentator, Brueggemann. We studied him in rabbinical school. He was the first one we always studied, was Brueggemann, Walter Brueggemann. So he writes, perhaps the most important matter in Yitro's plan concerns the qualifications of the judges, going to what we were talking about. They are to be able, God-fearing, haters of dishonest gain. The list of qualifications is both theologically referenced and aware that corruption is likely to be not about large theological matters, but about the modest temptations of trips on yachts and private planes and other kinds of economic manipulation, right? This is a very important point I feel like he's making. He says, Yitro does not first say, find the cleverest, most important, most respected people. He says the qualifications are to be about people who will resist corruption, because corruption is likely not to be theological. Corruption is going to be monetary, right? It's going to be about creature comforts. It's about what you can do for me. right? A very important reminder in our time as we are dealing with so much of this, right, happening on so many levels. Such a system will save Moses from burnout, but more important, it will let the community go home in harmony and wholeness. So he's picking up on they will go to their place, their makom b'shalom, in peace. What does he say that means? In harmony, in wholeness, free of conflict, enjoying a stable, shared welfare. Moses accepts the proposals of Yitro and implements them, and he was able to delegate. He does not need to control all details of judicial administration. The text ends with a notice of Yitro's departure, leaving Moses at the mountain of God, ready for the great encounter that comes next. I never noticed that. Yitro goes to the mountain of God, teaches Moshe Torah, then leaves Moshe at the mountain of God, where Moshe is about to receive Torah. So what is he saying about that? The juxtaposition affirms. So there's a meaning to this juxtaposition of Yitro teaching Moshe at the mountain of God, and then before God teaches the people and Moshe at the mountain of God. Why? What's the juxtaposition? This liberated community must develop institutions that will sustain and stabilize the Exodus vision in daily social practice. Moses acts on the assumption that the power and passion that made the Exodus possible are the same power and passion that can make possible a society free of exploitation, meaning they are directly related. The Exodus vision is one, right, in which a society can be free of exploitation. Biblical faith is not simply a recital of odd, isolated events of rescue. It is also about the hard, sustained work of nurturing and practicing the daily passion of healing and restoring, and the daily rejection of dishonest gain. Israel intends here to institutionalize Exodus justice. This is a very special kind of justice, almost everywhere assumed in the Bible, but not much understood. Our common understandings of justice are Aristotelian in character, assuming that justice is a system of close retribution in which people receive their just desert. Such a system is especially prized by the well-off and the deserving, who prefer to see that the undeserving get exactly what they deserve and nothing else. Right? So our Western understanding of justice, he's saying, comes from the Aristotelian view that you get what you deserve if you mess up. That is not Exodus justice. Exodus justice is very different from such retributive justice. The slaves in bondage had no rights and were entitled to no serious consideration. Exodus justice is compensatory, giving to the needy and disadvantaged well beyond what is deserved. For that reason, in Deuteronomy and in the prophets, when justice is urged for widows and orphans, they are not to be given what they deserve, but what they need for a viable human existence. In Kaplanian terms, salvation. Exodus justice is salvific. You don't get what you deserve. Everybody deserves to come to their makom b'shalom. Everyone deserves to come to their particular place in wholeness, in fullness. Every human being deserves to fulfill their own unique potential. And salvation for Kaplan was building a society, and the Messianic era was when we live in a society where we make that possible for every human being. That is Exodus justice, says Brueggemann. Not you do this, you get that, like you get punished. This is about what everyone deserves, and everyone deserves to come to their makom b'shalom, to their particular place in wholeness and in fulfillment and in peace. What would it look like if we took Exodus justice seriously, right? And really worked on like a social system that guaranteed that for every child that got brought into this world, rather than arguing about who gets to decide whether a child is brought into this world. Anything so far, anybody? Yeah, Rachel.
So that last part just made me think of something that you said in the past about our concept of redemption, which is versus like a Christian concept of something like that, which is, that redemption is not something that anybody deserved. You turn in the coupon, right? So it's just a human being is not supposed to be a slave. So this seems like a very similar concept. So we weren't redeemed because we deserved to be redeemed. It wasn't anything we did. And we're not given something because we deserve it. We're given according to our need. So it just seems like an extension of that exact same concept.
100%. Beautiful, Rachel. That is exactly right, right? The widow and the orphan, they don't deserve to be fed and clothed and taken care of, because of anything they do or don't do.
There's no meriting it.
There's no meriting.
Exactly.
It's because
they're human beings.
Need to be a just society. And in a
right.
just society, everybody gets the minimum of what they need.
Right.
That's the Exodus vision of the society liberated people are supposed to build. Right? And this is the freedom too, that we don't talk a lot about as Americans. We talk a lot about freedom from. I'm free from your telling me what to do. I have free speech. I'm free to blah, blah, blah. Like I'm free from. And Exodus freedom is freedom to build a just and equitable society where people do not fall below a certain place. That is what Exodus, the vision of a liberated people, is supposed to be about building, if you put holiness at the top of the list of what your criteria are in the kind of society you want to build. Bert?
I once heard someone say, an American wakes up in the morning and first thing says, what are my rights? A Jew wakes up and says, what are my responsibilities?
Another way of saying exactly the same thing. Yes. What am I obligated to? And we hate that as Americans. We hate that word obligation. I've even had people say to me, I don't like that word obligation. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Right? Like, yeah, I get it. But I'm not going to agree with you that I'm not going to use it because, yes, is it lovely to do something because you want to? Of course. That doesn't mean if you don't want to, you don't have to. Right?
And I think that's a reason a lot of people stay away from religion.
Yes.
Because particularly Judaism, it means accepting responsibility. It means respecting obligation. And obligation is not optional.
That's right. And this is what Doniel Hartman calls, oh my God, it just went out of my head. Oh, being encumbered. That if you're going to participate in Jewish life, you agree to be encumbered by other Jews, right? You are agreeing to be encumbered. That's another way of talking about obligation, right? I agree to be encumbered by other Jewish people and then other peoples outside of our people, right? If I want to live a life of holiness and justice and goodness. Nick?
It occurred to me that how we have defined and talked about Exodus justice in this way, the idea that it's granting people things beyond deserving, beyond what they've done, is like love, right? So you've said before specifically, we don't love our kids because they've done something. It's because they are. I think specifically the words you used once is, our children could never do anything that would earn the love that we give them. And so in that way, Exodus justice that's the very commandment to love your neighbor and to love the stranger, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Means treat them the way you would want to be treated, and figure out what that is, first of all, but also, yes. So it's ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, so you shall, and love is action in this sense, and also the ger, betocham, the stranger among you. Exactly right. So the one who's not like you, the one who isn't somebody that you call us, the them, right? You have to do it with them too, if they're in your society. If you have power and they're in your society, you have an obligation to behave with what we would call love, which again, for Torah is not really an emotion. It's right. It's a way of treating someone. How do you treat someone you love? Like even when they screw up or disappoint you, but I have to say, for Valentine's Day, like, I don't know how Ellie knew that it was going to be a hard day for me, but she came over last night and she knows I love cards, and she knows I'm devastated that all the cards she's written me over the years burned. And she spends a lot of time on them because she knows that's what means something to me, not a present. And so she wrote this beautiful card, like this beautiful card that made me cry, of course. And then she said, wait, there are 2 more envelopes. And she says, I love the you before me, and I love the you since me. And she got off her camera roll all the pictures she'd taken of pictures of me before I had her, and had them printed out because she knows they all burned. And then she took all these pictures that of me with her since she was born, and printed those out because she knows they burned, so many of them. And so and took one of them was a big baby picture of me that she knows burned, and she blew it up into an 8x10 and framed it. And so sometimes they earn a little bit. It's just it's how we treat like people we love, is you give them what they would want, right? What they want for themselves, not what you want. Like imagining what they want for themselves, what they need, what they miss, what they're about. Like, and that just, ugh. So we have to figure out what that is. Like, that's the first step of justice, right? Is how do I figure out what somebody would want for themselves, right? This is where we screw up as a first world country all the time. We donate stuff to other countries that they don't need or want, right? We often don't listen for what they're needing and wanting. We impose our, privileged whatever on what we would want, right? And so anyway, I don't know how I got off on that. Where are we? Oh my goodness. How does it happen that we're at 11 o'clock? All right, we'll skip this. Oh, we did Michel Vuitton. Good. Just a little bit of Tali Adler. She's also talking about this relationship, which I'd never noticed before, between the smaller revelation and then the big revelation, that this revelation happens with Yitro and Moshe, and then Moshe goes to the big revelation. The juxtaposition of the narratives offers the possibility that the two are related. Perhaps the latter, the revelation at Sinai, is made possible by the former, Moshe's meeting with Yitro. What aspect of Moshe's reunion with Yitro, a meeting of father-in-law and son-in-law and the exchange of some pragmatic advice, might have facilitated the divine revelation at Sinai? Perhaps, in his words to Moshe, Yitro gives Moshe advice not only about how to govern the people, but also about how to remember who he is. The encounter setting is significant. It takes place at Har HaElohim. Most often when we think of Har HaElohim, we think about the encounter at Sinai and the giving of the 10 Commandments. But our first encounter with Har HaElohim took place long before, when Moshe was the young shepherd who encountered God in a burning bush because he took a moment to notice a strange sight and to turn aside. Remember, we talked about this when we talked about the burning bush this year. When Yitro comes to Moshe now, his last memory of him is still of that young shepherd, newly filled with purpose, the man who turned aside to notice God in the world. In telling the overburdened, lonely Moshe that he must seek help, recognize his position, and stand before God, Yitro is not only giving fatherly advice, he's reminding Moshe of who he once was and why God chose him. Don't lose yourself in the demands of your office, Yitro's telling Moshe. You've gone through unimaginable transformation since the last time I saw you, much of it good. You have faced down Pharaoh, delivered the people from Egypt, and become their leader. But you cannot lose the person you were the last time you stood here at this spot. It is by hearing Yitro remind him of why God chose him all those years ago, when he was a simple shepherd who first encountered God at this mountain and was warned not to come too close, that he can finally become the prophet who will ascend it and encounter God face to face. In reminding Moshe of his true mission, Yitro allows Moshe to rediscover the God of Sinai. Where do we find ourselves? It took me a while to understand what the question was. Where do we find ourselves? Sometimes in the desert, alone. Sometimes at the foot of a mountain, surrounded by thunder and lightning. But more often than that, in the quiet words of those who love us, reminding us of who we are and giving us back parts of our soul we thought we'd left behind. This is what we do as a community. This is what we do together, right? There's times I just feel like a victim. I feel like a refugee. I feel like an encroacher and a squatter, right? I can't even provide a safe home for my daughter. Like there's just so many levels at which it's just ruptured, the sense of identity that so many of us have, the sense of where we belong and the disorientation. And also in our political climate right now, it is so disorienting. It feels, we're back to chaos. We're back to not knowing what the heck is coming down the pike next. And that was a really important teaching for me, that Yitro is not just giving Moshe a system whereby it's going to be a better system. He's reminding Moshe who Moshe is, that you can do this. You're so burdened now with all that's happened to you and all that you're carrying. Don't forget who's under there. Who you are is the person God chose because you were curious and you were paying attention. Open up to that. That's still who you are. And if you do that, you can be the prophet who can ascend and stand meeting God face to face and inspire the people as you get new learning. And I was like, oh, yeah, right, Amy. You can wallow in victimhood if you'd like to. It's like not going to do anybody any good. To like just feel like that's all there is the burden, of SBA and FEMA and insurance adjusters. And, you can get mired in that, or you can remember who you are underneath that and who's going to remind you of that. Where do you find that? Sometimes alone in the desert, sometimes at the foot of a mountain surrounded by thunder and lightning, most often in the kind words of people who see you and love you and care about you and give you back a part of your soul that you thought maybe you'd left behind. That's what we do. Thank you all for always doing that. Always. For each other, and certainly for me. And we will continue to do it for each other. That's what we do. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.